This is Up Next. I'm Tiziana Deering. Two of this year's more ambitious ballot questions have run into a brick wall in the form of the state's highest court. Both questions dealt with the cost of living. One, rent control. The other, income tax. The Massachusetts Supreme Judicial Court ruled both violate the state constitution. Now, here to make sense of all of this, WBUR senior state politics reporter Gin Dumptious, and just joining us, Evan Horowitz, executive director of the Tufts Center for State Policy Analysis. Good morning to both of you.
Good morning, Tiziana. How are you?
Great, thanks. So, Gin, I'm going to ask you first. We're talking about two different ballot questions here. We'll start with the proposal that would have implemented strict statewide rent control for, summary purposes, basically at the rate of inflation. The court weighed in yesterday. What did they say?
So the court ruled that essentially the proposed ballot initiative ran afoul of the state constitution because it had a carve out for religious institutions. And this is costing rent control advocates dearly because now they're looking to another election cycle. And it's for them, they've been building towards this for years.
So, Evan, it's not that the court, for example, specifically objects to carving out for religious institutions. It had to do with the fact that once you bring religion into it, it works differently. Are you surprised by this ruling by the court?
No, this one was pretty straightforward. The Constitution is very clear. Ballot questions can't touch on religion. This one does. I can't believe that it was badly written. But having said that, most ballot questions are badly written.
Always?
Not always, but often. They're hastily drafted. They don't get reviewed by the legislature. So there are more errors.
So, again, this one has been particularly interesting. Bear with me for a second. As it got closer, and there are lots of steps. In fact, Evan, heads up, I'm going to ask you to walk us through those in a minute.
I'm ready.
There are lots of steps to what it takes to get on the ballot in November. And as this one crossed each hurdle, it started to create a deal of agita in communities around Massachusetts. And there started to be a conversation about, well, maybe we should do some kind of deal. Is rent control now dead this year, or is that still out there?
Proponents have essentially lost all their leverage. They were hoping, and this is a common tactic among folks who try to go to the ballot question, they're trying to force the legislature to move. And they're saying, well, we have this ballot question that could very well pass. And if you don't do something, we're going to go to the ballot and we're probably going to win. And what the court has done now with this is that they've eliminated all that leverage for those rent control proponents.
So, Evan, I find this interesting. Back in February, I was speaking with Boston Mayor Michelle Wu, noting that she was supporting the ballot measure. And she told me she hoped it would pass, even though she was concerned that it was too strict, because she favors a more scaled back form and thought that lawmakers would then kind of soften the edges. Here she is.
Something's got to give. The legislature and the state have in the past, when ballot initiatives have passed, they have gone back in and fixed things.
But Ginn says dead in the water now.
100% dead for this cycle. Yeah, there's no hope for this going forward right now. Now, I think it'll come back. The people behind it aren't going to give up. And probably they will draft a better proposal. There'll be something closer to the compromise. But there's a little breathing room now on this question.
All right. So, Ginn, jump on.
Well, I was going to say, if we're looking at 2028, we know what else is on the ballot in 2028. And that means a lot of money might be going another way. So for rent control, this could have been, their one big shot. I could be wrong about that. But, 2028 is an entirely different election cycle.
You mean federal elections
Yes.
change the
White House.
change the game. That's right. All right. So we have this other ruling this week, Evan, from the Supreme Judicial Court. This is the reducing the income tax from 5% to 4%. Governor Healy was really worried about this question. She was explicit about that in my conversation with her earlier this month.
That's a negative. That's a bad question. That's a hard red for me.
Tell me quickly, why did the Supreme Judicial Court think that it was a badly drafted question?
Well, this one's fantastic because it's not even that the question is badly drafted. The question is fine. It's that the Attorney General's office is supposed to summarize the question for voters, and they screwed up. And so that's not acceptable. The summary has to be right because the summary is the basis for the signature. So if there's a problem with the summary, all those signatures are potentially invalid. The court said, no, summary's no good, question's out, even though there's nothing wrong with the question.
And again, it had to do with missing some information for voters about the implications for capital gains tax, basically.
Exactly. And if I can push back a little bit on what Evan's saying, I think there was a back and forth between Campbell's office and the proponents I think the proponents, or at least some of the proponents, did down the road realize that this was an error, and they basically put the question to the SJC. The question was, is this a big enough error to knock it off the ballot? And that was kind of what the debate was happening. And obviously the SJC said, yes, this is a big enough error to knock it off the ballot.
The SJC being the Supreme Judicial Court. All right, so
But
now
again-
this, go ahead.
No,
Jump
again,
in.
it just speaks to how haphazard this whole process is, that things make it to the ballot or not based on a summary produced by the Attorney General's office that is never vetted until this late in the day, or based on a ballot question whose wording doesn't get any scrutiny until this late
But
in
it
the
is
day.
vetted, right? Doesn't the AG's office have to sign off on an earlier? This is
Yeah,
my process
in
question.
a perfunctory way. So there is a stage early on where the AG is asked, like, hey, does this pass muster? But she's not a court unto herself, and she doesn't have a lot of leverage for this ruling. And if she started saying, like, no, this doesn't pass muster, my goodness, the challenges would be thick, and you'd be in the courts early. So it's very awkward for the AG's office to say early on, like, no, this can't go. We don't think it's constitutional, because she's not the SJC. She's not the arbiter of what's constitutional, really.
Again, you were nodding.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are checks and balances in play, and I think this is something that's been around for a while, and I think you can argue either side of it, right? Bill Galvin, the Secretary of State, his office includes administering elections, will say, it's working as intended. Maybe not on the SJC side, but certainly
You
the
mean
overall
process
the
is
overall
working as
process.
intended.
That's been his argument. The legislature,
Not the first time I've disagreed with Bill Galvin.
but the legislature loathes ballot questions because a lot of ballot questions end up being end runs, or the through line, especially in this group of ballot questions, even with the ones knocked off heading towards November, the through line is the legislature hasn't acted, so these activists are moving ahead and saying, well, we're gonna put something forward.
I want to pick that up, and since you made the point, again, I'll turn to Evan with the follow up. This is a moment where I could imagine listeners saying, hey, I wanted to vote on rent control. I wanted to vote on whether or not to cut the state income tax. I've been thwarted in that by a legal process. So what's the message to voters?
I mean, I think voters may be saying that, but that's a weird thing for voters to say, I think. We don't have a
I
direct...
don't think that's what they thought you'd say the message was.
We don't have a direct democracy. You don't vote on policies. You vote for representatives who then pursue policies in your name. Now, if you're unhappy with what the representatives are doing, vote for different representatives. Like, I keep coming back to this. We have the least competitive state house elections basically anywhere. Make those competitive. Put different people in to vote for what you believe in. But the idea that we should, make sure we vote individually on every possible policy issue, no, that's wild.
All right. So again, last word to you, just briefly. What's the reaction on Beacon Hill in the legislature to these rulings?
Probably relief. I mean, a lot of them, they don't want to be dealing with this, and they've already got full plates in their minds on a whole bunch of other things. I think there's relief that they don't have to deal with this because they're getting pressure from both sides, from interest groups in every corner. They don't want to be dealing with this.
All right. Gin Domchus is WBUR's senior state politics reporter. Evan Horowitz is executive director of the Center for State Policy Analysis at Tufts University. Gin, Evan, thanks for breaking it down with us.
Thank you, Tiziana. Can I say also welcome again to BUR?
Thank you. Thank you very much.